I'm tipping my hat, since I have a funky hairdo right now, I'm tipping my hat to Demon Hunter. Fear is not my guide. I feel nervous, which is funny because I'm about to give a speech on fear. You know, fear is one emotion we share with our four-legged friends. The adrenalized and the adrenaline-infused fight or flight syndrome is something we have in common with animals. Fear comes from many directions and avenues. Today I'm going to talk about 4 boulevards of bullies, in each instance where I shrank in cowardice. Enter bully number 1, Roger Bowles. He was an 8th grader and I was a 7th grader on the back of the school bus coming home from Sidney Lanier Intermediate School. And I had my PE uniform, which was a reversible blue on one side, yellow on the other side shirt, and gym shorts. And we kind of wrapped them up and rolled them, and so everything fit into the sleeve of that gym shirt. And I was throwing the gym shirt and hitting Roger Bowles in the back of the head. And he said, and mind you, this interview is censored for viewer discretion. He turned around at me, "If you throw that at me again, I'll kick your bleep." And I took it in my hand and I threw it and hit him in the head. So when the bus stopped at our bus stop and we got off, all the kids pretty much made a circle around us, and me and Roger Bowles went at it like Ollie and Frazier. Only he was Joe Frazier and I was Mumble Bumble Ali. I was floating like a bee and stinging like a butterfly. My haymakers and roundhouses were catching nothing but air, but his uppercuts were connecting with my jaw, and his jabs were connecting with my left cheek and my nose and connecting with my right cheek and my forehead. After a while, I think he saw that I'd suffered enough punishment at his hands, and he stopped the fight. And he probably had some sort of smart aleck last word remark as he left with his posse of friends. And I probably left and walked home alone. Later that night, incidentally, around the dinner table, I was probably reaching for a roll off my dad's plate. And my dad took a spoon in his right hand and he smacked me in the wrist. And dude, I just started bawling. I lost it. And my dad felt so bad. I'm probably so guilty. He came up to my bedroom later and said, "Doug, if there's anything I can do to make up for this, I'll do it. Just let me know." And at that moment, inside my head, I realized I could totally play this card and have him take me to Toys R Us and pick out any toy that I wanted. But I decided at the wise old age of 12 that I wouldn't take advantage of his guilt. Enter bully number 2, Tom Porter. I was in woodshop in 8th grade. It was the beginning of a new school year. And Tom Porter, who was in our class in 7th grade, was not in our class in 8th grade. And Todd came up to me in woodshop and says, "What do you think about Tom not being here this year?" And I said, "If he was here, I'd kick his bleep." And what did Todd do that day? He went home and he told Tom Porter what I had said. The next day, I was at my best friend Tommy Lovelace's house, and me and Tommy were throwing the football in the backyard, and Tom Porter comes over and he starts tossing the football with us. And at one point he comes up to me and he says, "Todd told me that you said if I was going to Lanier still, that you would kick my bleep. Did you say that?" What did I say? No, I didn't say that. Enter bully number 3, Mike Zhang. By this time, I was a junior in high school and I was playing the rough and tumble sport of football. And our entire team was in the school cafeteria, which was called the Scorpitorium, because we were the Desert Scorpions. And we were in the cafeteria, not in our uniforms. We were taking a test. Did you know that football players took tests? We were all pretty much required to go both ways, play a position on offense and play a position on defense. And the offense, of course, had plays, and the coach tested us to make sure we knew where to run or who to block on any specific given play. So we were in the cafeteria taking tests, and Mike Zhang was sitting across the table from me, and he made some sort of statement to kind of shut me up for some reason. and he made a reference to a conversation that I had made privately to his brother, my best friend, after an altercation that Mike and I had. And I was telling Pat, man, I thought I could whoop him. I was obviously resigned in defeat over this altercation, and I told Pat that, man, I thought I could whoop him, obviously concluding that I could not. And so he pulls that out and throws it at me. And my defensive coordinator, Lyman Olney, was sitting a couple tables over, and he was watching me. And so I regret this. I was afraid that if I stood up to Mike, that we would probably get in a fight and we'd go outside on the sidewalk, and he was on the wrestling team, and I don't know if I could keep him at bay with my fist. He might wrestle me down, and in losing the fight, I might have my head slammed against the concrete and be a paraplegic or something. That was my fear. I didn't say that fear was reasonable or rational. So oftentimes it's not. And so, man, if I could have that one back. And it was funny. I was seeing a therapist a couple years ago, and I brought this up, and I said, man, if I could have that back, this is what I would say to him. Bleep you. You're my best friend's brother. I would prefer to be your friend, but I will never be your bleep. And, you know, just that exercise of saying that felt better. It's, you know, it's decades ago when I was in high school. Enter bully number 4, Roger Martinez. By this time, I was 34 years old. I was the father of a 2-year-old daughter with another daughter on the way. And I was running the number 2 best-selling Christian music magazine in the entire world. CCM magazine was number 1, and HM magazine was number 2. And this is pertinent to the story. And I also wanted to say that my role as the editor of this Christian music magazine, I perceived myself to have kind of like a voice, a pastoral voice, kind of like a shepherd to thousands of rock and roll sheep. I don't think this is delusions of grandeur as much as it was kind of a serious calling that I took serious. And I knew that, you know, influential teenagers and 20-somethings and fans of hard music, you know, metal, hard rock, alternative, punk rock, they read the pages of HM. Like I said, it was the number 2 best-selling Christian music magazine in the world. It was like number 7 of Christian magazines in their entirety, like Focus on the Family and other types. Today's Christian Woman, I think, was number 1. Anyway, so we had a responsibility, and I took it seriously to kind of approach things from a biblical viewpoint and to give good advice, not just be an entertainment, but to have some sort of spiritual role. And so this is pertinent to the story later on. So Roger Martinez was the lead singer frontman for a Christian speed metal thrash band called Vengeance Rising that was handpicked to go into the world of the burgeoning late 80s speed metal thrash scene. It started up in the Bay Area of San Francisco, and he had bands like Slayer and Metallica and Megadeth and Testament playing this super fast, brutal form of music. And there wasn't a single Christian band that was really going into that style. There was Christian rock, there was Christian punk rock, Christian metal, Christian glam metal, all kinds of different styles, but this band was handpicked and put together to specifically go into this dark area where this band called Slayer kind of ruled. And so Vengeance Rising was an intense band. They weren't like a Mr. Rogers Sunday School attempt to reach the Slayer crowd. This was intense, brutal music that fit and actually was on peer, and you could judge for yourself. I'll put a song with theirs in the link, the song White Throne. We'll listen to that, and you'll see that these guys were world class. So Vengeance Rising was this band, and Roger Martinez was the front man. And he was like, he was a pastor at this rock and roll church called Sanctuary. He pastored the Sanctuary Church in North Hollywood, and Sanctuary was started in the mid-'80s. All these people, mostly kids, were going to these Christian metal shows, like Stryper specifically, who played in the Hollywood scene. A bunch of kids were getting saved, and they would go to church the next Sunday to a typical denominational church with their black hair, smelling like smoke, changed leather jackets, so they wouldn't always be welcomed or get the discipleship that they needed. So the Sanctuary Church was started to disciple the thousands, hundreds and thousands of kids that were getting saved at these Christian metal shows. And Roger was a pastor at one of these Sanctuary churches, and he spoke like a surfer dude, a skater dude. But the band broke up. Years after they broke up, he did a complete 180, and he considered himself a satanic atheist. And although he once had teaching tapes, or he recorded his sermons on cassette tapes, and you could go online, and actually back in the day of mail orders, mostly you'd get a newsletter from him thanking you for joining his mailing list and seeing a bunch of the teaching tapes. He would teach on all kinds of things like how to study the Bible and end times prophecy and evangelism and sanctification, all kinds of heady subjects. He was really a deep thinker and a great public speaker. But by this time, the band had broken up. They had a bad business deal go bad, and the 5 members of the band all met and said, okay, let's take this $17,000 debt and let's divide it 5 ways and call it a day. And Roger was like, no, let me keep the name, let me keep the band, and I will go on, and I'll take the debt. And he regretted that a few years later. He got really mad, and like I said, did a complete 180. And he was writing letters to his fan base, which were in the tens of thousands of people, mostly kids. And he wrote them this 17-page letter where he was not only declaring himself to be a satanic atheist, but he was recruiting, like an evangelist, people to come his way and to become a satanic atheist like himself. And so this was a situation that I couldn't ignore. As the editor and spokesperson for HM Magazine, I couldn't just ignore this, because there was a lot of fans, a lot of parents, a lot of friends, and a billion-dollar Christian music industry looking to me to see what I would say. So I couldn't ignore it, so I called for a phone interview with Roger. Now, Roger was volatile. At one point during this period where he was going off the deep end, he was at a Christian bookstore, and the record label he was on was called Intense Frontline Records. There's 2 different labels, but Intense and Frontline Records. And he was grabbing the cassette tapes and the CDs and pulling them off the shelf. This is a company that's not, doesn't have integrity. They shouldn't be on the shelf in a Christian bookstore. And the police had to be called to take him out of that bookstore, because he was just pulling all the product off the shelves, because he was hopping mad at the situation that had happened to him. So he was a volatile person. I did not know during this interview how he would respond to confrontation. I actually had, again, irrational fear that he would show up on my doorstep with a gun. And I had a family. Going back, one more little story about Roger. He called me up during the mid-90s when the Branch Davidian compound was surrounded by the FBI, and he told me over the phone, man, they should send me in there. David Koresh knows me, because David Koresh and his weird-looking girlfriend went to go see Vengeance Rising in the Dallas area and waited after the show to talk to Roger. So Roger knew he would have an audience with David Koresh, because David Koresh respected Vengeance Rising on some level. He said, they should send me in there, man. I could take a bunch of them out before they took me down. So I figured this guy is volatile. And so during the interview, I asked him about how he came upon his path to be a satanic atheist, is what he called himself. And one of the quotes he pulled, which was kind of word for word, I realized later, of the Richard Dawkins or Hawkins book, The God Delusion. He said, I think it's immoral to teach children to believe in a God that sends people to hell. And when I heard that quote, fear struck my heart. I thought of my kids, and I thought, is he threatening my family by saying it's immoral to teach children? You brought up the word children. It struck fear in me, and my mind was reeling in fear. I was not on my game. I've had several intense interviews in my life, and this was near the top of the most intense. And I was not on my game. I remember one point when we were going over the fine art of debating the existence of God, and he brought up languages and what languages might have existed before Greek, which the New Testament was written in, and Hebrew, which the Old Testament was written in. And I knew in my mind Sanskrit was the answer, but I couldn't speak. And he went on to reveal the answer, Sanskrit, and treated me like he was so much more knowledgeable than I was. And, I'll admit he was a well-learned, well-read dude. And so I have no shame in putting him above me at a level of intelligence, maybe, or being articulate. But I knew these facts, I knew these things, and I was not on my game to deliver a good debate because fear took kind of control of me. So if I had an opportunity to do that again, what would I do? First off, I would take a deep breath and I would go over the facts in my head, go over reality. And hopefully that would get me out of this fear shell that I was in. So my conclusion, face the fear. Let fear pass through you like a cloud. Enjoy the experience. When I was young, I used to get involved in lots of high energy sports, motocross, skateboarding in empty swimming pools and skate parks, getting vertical and zero gravity situations. All these sports involved lots of adrenaline. And there was this phase like, man, that was a adrenaline rush, you know, going down the ski slopes or something. Man, that was real adrenaline rush. That was a rush, man. Well, fear can be appreciated like an adrenaline rush because it comes at you with adrenaline. That stuff is being pumped into your body, and you can actually enjoy that as a thrill, enjoy that as an experience. Let it pass through, and also know that this emotion will be over soon. It's just another emotional experience. Join the discussion.